I'm Doug Carlston, Chairman of the Board of the Carlston Family Foundation. For the moment. And it's a great pleasure to welcome you to our fourth symposium and dinner honoring some outstanding, extraordinary teachers throughout the state of California. Tonight we have 5 more great teachers from around the state that we want to honor. I'd like to add as an aside, we have our first from Marin County, so we're very pleased about that. But as all of you know who've been here before, I like to give the whole history of the foundation before we get into that. So I'm going to take a moment and tell you a little bit about where this all started, where it came from. In 1980, my brother Gary, who's over there, and sister Kathy and I started a software company called Broderbund Software, which made Is this too close? Let's move it away. It made educational software and operated here in Marin for about 20 years. In the mid-'80s, we started a foundation to which we contributed 3% of our profits for the purpose of supporting volunteer efforts by our employees. When the company was sold in 1998, we lost we didn't have any employees after that, so we lost that. It's kind of obvious, isn't it? So we decided that we'd try to carry on the fundamental educational mission of the company through the foundation in a different way. I think that at the time I was probably much influenced by Stand and Deliver and things like that, but I knew personally that many of us have had one extraordinary teacher who's made a huge difference in our own lives. And for those of us who grew up in the public school system, which didn't always have the highest quality of education available to everybody, a single teacher can make an enormous difference. He can make all the difference between extraordinary academic success and a failure to see that road as an option. So we decided back at the end of the 90s to try a new approach by tracking down extraordinary young men and women who had gone to some of the poorer schools in this state and yet had succeeded academically, and talk to them about the reasons that they had succeeded. We heard lots of stories about gangs and drugs and dysfunctional families and so on, but we also repeatedly heard stories about teachers who gave them safe harbor, who gave them inspiration, who believed in them, who cared more about them in many cases than anyone else in their lives. And we all know the value of a single adult mentor to young people. Sometimes a single person made the entire difference. Not always. There are many people who went to these schools and succeeded academically who had stable families with strong supportive parents. But what we found was that whether you did or not, there were some teachers who could just reach across, get to the inner you, and make a huge difference in your life. And we decided that we would dedicate this foundation to finding and honoring those teachers in California, finding a way to give them a more powerful voice, encourage them to continue what they're doing, because one of our assumptions, only partly true, is that you don't always get a lot of feedback about the work that you're doing. You don't always hear what an extraordinary job you do, and it's very easy, given the number of hours that you have to dedicate to your kids, to get a little discouraged, and it can put an enormous amount of stress on your families as well. So we have a lot of you here tonight, and we're deeply grateful for those of you who have come repeatedly here and contributed in other ways to the foundation. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But it's also, I'm talking also to some of the people for whom this is the first time here. And I think that the initial impetus was to find a way to thank some of the most extraordinary people in our midst whom our political system often doesn't find a very adequate way to pay or to reward. Over time, we realized that another way we might be able to be useful was to help this group of extraordinary teachers get to know one another. And so we set up a daily symposium here with their guidance on subjects of interest. But a primary purpose was to allow them to meet people who, like them, had solved the riddle of how you reach young people effectively to make them into true scholars. That's been going on for a number of years now, and the work, for those of you who are here today, the work is getting, I think, better every year. We're incredibly proud of it. We're also, as we evolve here, we're starting to think of the foundation as a way of augmenting your voices, to give you, if you will, a bully pulpit where you can be heard in Sacramento, where you can be heard at the schools of education in the state, where what you have to say can make a big difference across the state. So we have a lot of fun here tonight, but there's a serious purpose underlying it. And although I do sometimes get a little silly, I do hope that you'll forgive me. I'm as proud as anything I've ever done in my life to be here working with you for our joint purpose. So we're going to start now, and you go right on eating. I like to get started while you're still eating so that the evening doesn't get too long, because we do invite our teachers and their nominators to have a few words with you, and their stories are often very fascinating. And I don't want you falling asleep when number 5 gets up here. There are a couple words of caution, as I've said to all of you before, but I need to say to the new honorees, as you may know, there is some compensation that comes with this honor, and it's fully taxable. So try to set some of it aside for April 15th.